You are locked into the Cowbell Kingdom Podcast, frontline coverage of the Sacramento Kings. Now, here are your hosts, Jonathan Santiago and James Ham.
Welcome to the Cowbell Kingdom Podcast. I'm Jonathan Santiago here at the Thomas and Mack Center, Thomas and Mack Arena here at the campus of UNLV from Las Vegas Summer League. We've made it, James. James, you have returned back to Sacramento, but you got to catch the Kings' first three games. What do you think?
You know, I don't think they look too bad, John. I think that this is a team that came in with a lot of NBA experience. The first game, they played poorly. It was a shock. But since that first game, they've actually started to piece things together. Ben Mclemore specifically has started to get better each and every game, incrementally better. You know, Quincy Acey has been a guy who's really played well all the way through. A guy like the kid out of Oregon State.
Jared Cunningham.
Why am I drawing? No. Eric Moreland, has played extremely well. I think he's a guy who's earned an invitation to the training camp. And I think Marshawn Brooks has played really, really well and may even fit a specific need for this team as a bench scorer going forward. So that's another guy. And for that matter, I really like what Nik Stauskas has brought to the table as well, John. So overall, I think it's been a pretty solid appearance by the Kings, and I expect them to keep going in the tournament.
Yeah, we started to see after today's game against the Minnesota Timberwolves and also the previous game that they played against, who was it? Was it the D-League Select team on Monday, their last game?
D-League Select team on Monday,
so
yes.
Ben Mclemore had his two best games against those two particular teams. And, you know, talking to Ben after today's game, he talked about how, you know, he was pressing early on and was just trying to force the issue on things. And now he's just playing from a level of comfort. He's not really thinking too much. He's just out there, you know, playing, quote unquote, his game, and you're seeing it. You're seeing him just be very comfortable out there on the floor. You're not seeing a kid who is just, again, forcing the issue. He's letting the game come to him, and you know, it's paid dividends. Again, he scores 22 points today against the Minnesota Timberwolves. You know, had a nice outing against the D-League Select team. And this is what you wanted to see. And another thing, too, we've gotten a chance to see how a lineup featuring Ben Mclemore and Nik Stauskas looks. And I think, you know what, for the most part, they do play the same position. You know, they both can shoot the basketball, but they do it in different ways. You know, one of the things I thought of when the Kings had mentioned, hey, we are going to potentially play these two guys together is, okay, now maybe Ben has somebody who can feed him the ball when he's running around the court like a madman, kind of like Reggie Miller or Rip Hamilton, because Nik Stauskas is a willing passer. And I think we're starting to see that a little bit.
Yeah, John, what I like about Stauskas, too, is that today he didn't have a great game. He goes 1 for 3 from the field, and you don't want him shooting 3 shots. To me, that's ridiculous. That's his teammates not doing their job getting him the ball. What I really liked is that when he wasn't getting the ball, he was feeding the ball, and he ended up with 5 assists, and that shows you that he has a head on his shoulders. That, look, if I'm not going to get a bunch of shots, if I'm not going to get open looks, I'm going to do things that makes my exactly what happened. I mean, the Kings had no problem dispatching a pretty solid Minnesota team who actually does have a lot of NBA experience as well, and I thought they looked solid. You know, again, we're not seeing the one guy that I've been like horribly disappointed with in this whole entire tournament so far, John, was Derrick Williams. Just because he comes in and he acts like, you know, he's there to stretch out or something, that he doesn't need Summer League. And the fact is, he's never been consistent enough as the number 2 overall pick in the draft to not go to Summer League. He needs Summer League as a player who needs to grow. And then we have him leave today under, you know, sort of a strange situation where nobody knew he was going to leave. But the Kings are now saying, well, this was planned. He wasn't going to be here for the whole time anyways, and that he's heading back home. So, John, what are you hearing on that end? Because this is kind of a strange situation. And again, I was pretty disappointed in Derrick Williams' play overall.
Yeah, Derrick only averaged I believe, around 13 points per game. No assists, 0 assists in 3 games for the Sacramento Kings, and less than, I believe, 3 rebounds a contest. Definitely below 4. So that was not a good outing for Derrick Williams while he was out here in Las Vegas. But yes, it is shocking that he's not here. And Michael Malone went on record and said, hey, this was the plan. We had talked about this months in advance, that he was only going to be out here potentially, 3 games or so, and then he could go home. And you know what? Mysterious circumstances indeed that he leaves, because once again, last night we hear rumors surfacing once again that the Sacramento Kings are reigniting trade talks with the Detroit Pistons for Josh Smith. And as many people remember, Derrick Williams' name was a guy who came up in those trade talks with the Pistons. So they haven't made a move yet. We haven't seen anything break thus far on Twitter. Maybe something breaks right now, and we see something happen within the next 24 hours. But, I don't know. I mean, our friend Sean Cunningham of News 10 had tweeted out that he had, spoke to some folks, and, they don't necessarily they kind of laughed at the thought of something happening anytime soon in regards to a trade for Josh Smith. But it does seem really fishy indeed that the Sacramento Kings would pull Derrick Williams from Summer League on the heels of trade talks reigniting again with the Detroit Pistons.
Yeah, John, and I don't know how to feel about the Josh Smith conversation. Is Josh Smith the right fit for the Sacramento Kings? I think as a player, he is the right fit, especially if we're talking about an up-tempo team. Josh Smith can really get out and run. He can block shots. He can pass. He's a highlight reel waiting to happen in the open court. He's got long arms. Again, he is a good fit, especially on a front line with Rudy Gay and DeMarcus Cousins. But he does have some personality issues, and they have come up again and again throughout his career, and I'm not sure how he will mesh. But I guess, with the Sacramento Kings, you got to try a lot of different things. And if this is one way that you can get better, then I don't know how you turn it down if you're giving away on a player like Josh Smith.
Yeah, when it comes to Josh Smith, this was a situation where if they can get a Rajon Rondo, it makes sense. I would be fine with that. I know a lot of people around here. We talk to other NBA scribes. They don't really like the idea of bringing Josh Smith to Sacramento. No. And I don't like Josh Smith coming to this team. Not necessarily I don't like him. I just don't think that he makes them any better than what they are right now if you bring him to this incarnation of the Sacramento Kings. If your starting 5 is Darren Collison, Nik Stauskas, or Ben Mclemore, Rudy Gay, Josh Smith, and DeMarcus Cousins, it's a pretty good – it's a decent starting 5, but that's not a playoff starting 5 in the Western Conference, in my opinion. So I don't really quite understand it unless, the Kings, as you mentioned, they've got to take a lot of chances. They've got to play the game a little bit more aggressively and differently than most. And maybe this is what they do. If they do get Josh Smith, set up a domino to fall in the event that they can still get Rajon Rondo. Maybe it's by trade or maybe it's via free agency next summer because Rondo, is in the final year of his contract. And it seems to me that this is a team that does have interest in Rondo, and he definitely does fit, what they need out of the point guard position. Obviously, with Isaiah Thomas now gone, I still believe that they do need an upgrade at that position, despite the acquisition of Darren Collison. But Josh Smith, it's a move to me. You get the guy. I guess if you can get him for, if you're getting rid of Jason Thompson and you're getting rid of Derrick Williams or you're getting rid of Jason Terry, who we should talk about a little bit later on in this episode of the Cowbell Kingdom podcast. Again, it's much like the Rudy Gay trade. You're you're buying low on a talented asset. But as you mentioned, there are quirks. With Rudy Gay coming to Sacramento, the guy has always been known as a standout citizen, and the guy has never had any issues in his career run-ins with coaches. Whereas you've got a guy in Josh Smith who has a track record and a history of, not agreeing or not seeing eye to eye with guys like Mike Woodson or Larry Drew in Atlanta, and most recently Maurice Cheeks in Detroit.
Yeah, John, it's such a delicate balance. You want chemistry, and you always think back to teams that have had kind of a rugged exterior, but it just works. And I don't know that the Kings are a team that's going to happen with. I don't know if they're a team that's going to be able to piece everything together and then it's just going to work. But I guess you never know. I mean, at the end of the day, again, Sacramento isn't exactly a hotbed for free agency. And not only that, but they do have a lot of contracts that they can't get out from underneath. If it is a Jason Thompson and then their trade exemption and then another player going somewhere else, maybe they get Dallas engaged in the Jason Terry conversation, and they're willing to give up an asset to make this work for Detroit, then I could see something maybe materializing quickly here. But, let's get to the Jason Terry stuff. The Jason Terry stuff is strange because we've never seen Jason Terry in Sacramento. Never. He's never, outside of being in a Celtics or a Nets or a Dallas Mavericks jersey, Jason Terry has refused to come to Sacramento, if you want to call it that. The Kings let him go home to Dallas to rehabilitate his knee. And then while the Kings are trying to figure some stuff out and trying to see what's going to happen with all the free agency and the draft, Jason Terry came out and had some things that were clearly meant to incite the Sacramento Kings and to speed up his exit from their roster. At least that's how I look at it. John, how do you feel about what Jason Terry had to say about DeMarcus Cousins and about Rudy Gay?
Well, I think that there has to be a little bit of resentment from Jason Terry's part on the behalf of Isaiah Thomas as well. Isaiah is like a little brother to Jason Terry, and it sure did seem like during this entire process that the Sacramento Kings did not want, they did not want to retain Isaiah Thomas. They maintained that they tried to. But, if you come from Isaiah's perspective, he'll say, hey, I didn't think that the Sacramento Kings wanted me that much. And maybe, the Sacramento Kings had a price tag for him. They valued him at, what was it, reportedly $4 to $6 million, and that's what they thought. But that wasn't enough for Isaiah Thomas. So I think Jason Terry maybe is, launching a couple grenades from a distance on behalf of his buddy. And at the same time, he doesn't want. We've talked about Jason Terry not as a basketball playing asset. We've talked about him as a contractual asset, an expiring contract that you could perhaps trade in a deal for a Josh Smith, to land you an upgrade of talent. So, we'll see. You got to be wondering if this is, like you said, a way for Jason Terry to put pressure on the Sacramento Kings to move him or allow him to be free from his contract sooner rather than later, because he would like to tag on with a championship contender. I did find it interesting, a little bit after the draft, I had heard that Chris Mullin was going out to visit Jason Terry out in Dallas and have conversations with him. So whether those conversations have happened already or they're yet to happen, I'm sure we'll be finding out a little bit more about Jason Terry's future at Sacramento not too long from now.
Yeah, John, I think that what most people assumed was that the Kings were just going to buy him out in stretch provision. The guy was going to go out and retire, and the Kings might apply for a medical exemption to get their money back. But that doesn't seem like Jason Terry clearly wants to play. And after his comments towards DeMarcus and Rudy Gay, I kind of get the feeling that the Kings are going to take a hard line with him and say, hey, dude, we'll see you on October 1st. Get ready to play, or medically retire, or you're going to get fined for every day that you're not here. I think that that's kind of where we're heading with this, right? Either that or, hey, you're going to have to take $4 million buyout, and you're going to have to leave money on the table, and good luck going and getting your money in Dallas or wherever else you want to play. But we're not going to give you the full money, especially if you're going to act like that. So I just think it adds a really interesting layer to what happens next in free agency. And this is going to go relatively quick because I think the Kings want this situation rectified before the start of the season. And I think Jason Terry wants it done as well. So, yeah, I'm kind of intrigued to see how this one plays out.
Okay, for clarification's sake to our listeners, in case you didn't know what Jason Terry said, he was appearing on a radio show, I believe, with Doug Gottlieb. Or not Doug Gottlieb. It was somewhere. Where was this? He was on a radio show in Dallas. And he said, quote, about the Sacramento Kings, I wouldn't say it's rebuilding, but a building process. DeMarcus Cousins, a huge talent, attitude, a little shaky. Rudy Gay, not a proven winner in this league, but a tremendous talent and a guy you can build around. I mean, you know, he had kind of a backhanded slight at Rudy Gay and DeMarcus Cousins. So it was almost like he was able to play both sides in his comments there of saying, hey, these guys have positives and they also have negatives. But, yeah, I mean, when it comes to Jason Terry, I think both you and I agree we've never really seen him as part of the future here in Sacramento. And even just the near future as is. I mean, being a veteran who can help a young team, never really saw him like that. Just because, as he says, he wants to win a championship. You know, he's at the end of his career and he wants to play for something meaningful.
Well, I think everybody wants to win a championship, John. Some people deserve to, some people don't. You know, we'll see how that plays out. But hey, I think the one thing we should bring up about DeMarcus Cousins is, again, he's made himself available to national media. We got to see him with Bill Simmons on the BS Report. You know, I've said this about DeMarcus Cousins so many times, and I don't know if people listen, but he's a very, intelligent young man. He may have some emotional quirks. He may have some personality issues here and there, but he is a very intelligent young guy. And to watch him sit there with Bill Simmons and go back and forth, to me, it was awesome. I thought it was a great conversation. I like that he was honest and he said that I don't like Chris Paul. And I like that he said that, you know, he thinks Rajon Rondo is the best point guard in the game and all of these things. But, John, did you get a chance to watch the BS Report with DeMarcus?
Yeah, I watched a little bit of it. I didn't watch it in its entirety. I was going to continue it. I think I watched the first 20 minutes, and then I had to get to work on some stuff. But yeah, it is on our site. If you haven't caught it, it's, you know, it was pretty interesting. You know, Simmons, what was it? Right around the 5.5 minute mark, you get the first question about Isaiah Thomas, and you know, DeMarcus didn't really bite too much there. But yeah, I mean, you know, 30 plus minutes of conversation with DeMarcus Cousins. Hey, if he wants to go to the national media, guys like Bill Simmons, to have his story told, go right ahead. It's a bigger audience. It's a bigger platform. Feel free to do that. And you know what? That's how people can get to know you. If you want people to get to know you, do more things like that. Have more appearances on platforms like that. And you'll get some recognition, and that's what he's apparently doing.
Yeah, John, I think you brought up Isaiah Thomas there, and I'll say this: he didn't completely shirk the question on Isaiah Thomas, because when Bill Simmons asked him who's the best point guard you've ever played with, his answer was pretty quick, and it was John Wall and Eric Bledsoe. And again, the Kings have been linked to Eric Bledsoe in rumors over the last 24 hours. Again, I don't know how in the world the Kings could possibly make that work. It's just a very far-fetched thing that somehow they would be able to clear enough cap space to go out and you know, do some sort of sign and trade with the Phoenix Suns. They just don't have the assets to do it. But DeMarcus Cousins would love to play with John Wall. He would love to play with Eric Bledsoe, his former teammates from his one season in Kentucky. But, you know, again, I just don't see how that's possible.
All right, on that note, let's wrap up this edition of the Cowbell Kingdom Podcast. I'm here in Las Vegas. I'll be here for a little bit longer. James, you will be returning we potentially in a few weeks, but until then, we will be back with another episode and another edition of the Cowbell Kingdom Podcast next week. And feel free to subscribe to us on iTunes and follow us everywhere on our social media accounts, twitter.com and facebook.com/Cowbell Kingdom as well. So for James Ham, I'm Jonathan Santiago. Thank you for tuning in to the Cowbell Kingdom Podcast.